Support for higher education in focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. On the Hub Lawn or at psu.bncollege.com. The attorneys of McNeese, Wallace, and Nurek. Your mission, your goal, your lawyers. More at mwn.com. And from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Higher Education in Focus. I'm Patty Satalia with my co-host, Penn State President Dr. Eric Barron. A team of 170 students from across Penn State is aiming to be the first university-led, privately funded team to land a spacecraft on the moon. With the assistance of faculty and researchers, the Penn State Lunar Lion team has celebrated many successes since its inception in 2011. But there are still challenges to overcome before their journey to the moon. Joining us to discuss those successes and challenges are Gretchen Buttorff, a senior in aerospace engineering and engineering leadership development at Penn State. Gretchen is the deputy student team lead for the Lunar Lion team, and she's responsible for organizing lab tours, interfacing with other team leaders, and ensuring all the systems are on task. Also with us is Neigh, a sophomore in information sciences and technology and French. He's also minoring in supply chain management at Penn State. Liam joined the Lunar Lion team at the beginning of his freshman year and is currently the media lead for the Lunar Lions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
For perspective, the United States put a man on the moon in 1969. The USSR's lunar mission took place 38 years ago. So just give us an idea what this Lunar Lion team, I'll begin with you, Liam, what this Lunar Lion team is attempting to do.
So we are attempting to land the first privately funded spacecraft on the moon. So our mission is to launch, get our spacecraft that we're building off the planet. Then once we land on the moon, fingers crossed, we then will do a 500-meter hop to demonstrate that we can move on the moon. So we have to move 500 meters regardless. And when we were planning this mission, it was either a rover, like you see with the Mars rover, but we decided to do a hopping maneuver instead because in space, if it moves, it can break. So we just decided to add a little bit of extra fuel and hop. Then we'll take high-definition pictures and video and send them back to Earth. And then we will pretty much be done with our mission. It's really not a complicated mission from a technical engineering perspective with regard to what has been done in the past. But as far as private industry goes, it's a first.
And so, why the moon? It's been a long time. Why the moon? Is there a particular challenge there for you? If technically that's
it's close, really. Yeah. I mean, it's either that or Mars, or you know, that was pretty much the rationale is that it's close.
When NASA launches something to the moon, we're talking about $1 billion with a B. So one of the challenges here is money, and I'll get all of you to talk about that. But first you, Gretchen.
Yes, that is our biggest challenge. Even securing our launch date depends on getting money. So obviously we're doing
$10 million.
Quite a bit of money. But it is cheaper for us doing it through the private industry, just getting funding. It's cheaper than it would be for NASA. And we're actually working with Phoenicia. They're a launch provider, a payload provider, sorry. And they're going to purchase the launch for us, and we're going to buy space on the launch. That's a cheaper way of doing it then, instead of just buying a launch vehicle ourselves. Also,
here's a good way to look at it, too. If you think of the movie cost of Gravity, the movie itself as a motion picture was $100 million to produce in total. Our mission is $60 million. So for nearly half the cost of the movie, we're actually going to put something on the moon, which is pretty incredible.
And oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know, universities would love to have the budgets of many of the movies that are being produced out there.
Yeah, no kidding. I just went to go see Interstellar over the weekend.
Right, for all sorts of things. And of course, $60 million is still a challenge for university.
Oh yeah.
You can't really spend tuition dollars on a launch vehicle. It's just not something that's
no,
done.
that's the truth.
So this really does depend on us looking for corporate sponsors and us looking for people that will dig into their pockets and say this is so incredibly valuable for us to do.
And in fact, you're doing a number of things, you as the person in charge of social media, in terms of Kickstarter and crowdsourcing. I'm curious to know just how much interest are you generating?
We're generating a lot of interest, and it's really cool because we have very aerospace-focused followers. So anytime I post anything that's kind of technical on Facebook or Twitter, recently we just completed our first successful hot firing of our rocket. It's a hydrogen peroxide monopropellant rocket, and so I put it up online, and I just put the video out really, and within a couple of minutes we had 5 or 6 comments saying, "Oh, what propulsion system are you using? What's your catalyst bed?" And you know, it's all the things that I have to be. I'm not an engineer by. Academically, I'm not an engineer, but because I've been with the team so long, I started picking up the jargon and figuring out how this stuff works, so I was able to actually field it correctly. But I answered their question in a rather technical way, similar to the way they answered, or they asked the question, and I sent her a screenshot of my answer. I was like, "Hey, is this right?" Like, does this sound like...
The engineer on your team.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's have a look, because actually in January the Lunar Lion mission will be introduced in a series of webisodes on WPSU.org. And in episode 1, we'll meet the team and learn about the background of the project. So let's have a quick look.
This is an ambitious project. A lot of the students on the team right now know it's ambitious, but I don't think they quite realize how ambitious it really is. And if I told them, they wouldn't be set back at all. They would just keep pushing forward.
So just stainless steel. All right.
Before we actually build the spacecraft and send it to the moon, we got to make sure that all of the components interact with each other correctly.
And then just do the full-scale testing, and that'd be a robust analysis.
So we got to make sure the propulsion system works correctly, the avionics system works correctly, the power system works correctly, and that they all interact with each other before we actually build the spacecraft.
Oh, sweet. Nice work.
First try.
The free time that they have after homework on weekends, they are devoting to the Lunar Lion the way that a varsity athlete would put in hours for their sport. These students are putting in hours for the Lunar Lion.
Usually takes a couple tries to make the mesh because there's always interferences. Yeah,
because
so
you're a boss.
It works out really well. So with so many people with all this passion and all this drive, all this motivation in this project, there's not a question or a doubt in my mind that we can't succeed.
You know, talk about engaged scholarship. From your perspective, Gretchen, what does this experience mean to you in terms of being prepared for the work world and where you might end up, and also watching some of your peers land jobs in the aerospace industry or wherever?
I will say that the aerospace industry is extremely competitive. That's one thing that scares me a little bit, but they do look for experience. They look for hands-on knowledge, doing things, building things, and that's something that Lunar Lion really gives you. And I mean, we have, I think, 3 students going to SpaceX next semester. So it's just amazing the opportunities.
Because they're aware of what you're doing here at Penn State.
Absolutely, and they want people who have worked with propulsion systems. Not many college students do that, but Lunar Lion does every day.
Yeah. Tell them about what you did with Ball Aerospace.
Yeah, I worked for Ball Aerospace this summer, and it was actually a job that was set up through our relationship with Lunar Lion and Ball Aerospace. So it's another great thing that they just, companies really look for aerospace students at Penn State now, and I mean everyone at Penn State who's working with Lunar Lion.
But of course you have students from across a large spectrum of colleges.
Absolutely.
Are they all being successful in the career market as related to Lunar Lion? Because one of the things is 170 students, long-term project, they're all moving through the system. So is this a success story for student careers?
Yes, I can speak to that one, I think. So my majors are French and information sciences and technology.
And you think, what does that have to do with
right?
this
And
Lunar
so
Lion
you
project?
say, like, what does that have to do with putting a spacecraft on the moon? Well, it happens to be a passion of mine. I love space. I think it's really, really cool. So I kind of found my niche here. But we have students from across the board. We just recently incorporated the law school because there's a lot of law that goes with putting things into space. We have marketing students. We have engineers across the board, electrical, mechanical, you know, you name it, engineers. Theater students are actually helping us make the model of the craft. So we really have everybody. I'm not even kidding. It's kind of it's nearly a business because we need marketing. We need people to talk about it too.
You know, this reminds me a little bit of Thon in terms of how it engages all of the resources of the university in in providing opportunities for students that's just off the charts.
And if you think about all of that engagement and activity, there's challenges for each segment of the team. So do you sort of list what are the biggest challenges that, I mean, obviously you believe this is going to work.
Absolutely.
And you're going to put something on the moon and it's going to hop and it's going to send back those videos. So do you have that sort of, here are the big challenges that we worry about?
Yeah, for sure. You can talk about that one.
Well, obviously funding is our big one. Another thing is our turnover rate, because people are graduating, they're moving on, leaving us, so we have a big turnover rate, and that's one thing that we've been working with, is trying to train our younger students, get them interested, get them up into leadership roles early enough so that all the information gets passed down. How about from your side? Do you see any major?
Yeah, well, I can speak to the turnover rate first. There was actually someone, we do outreach events, and over the summer I stayed here doing some work, and they sent us out to Erie. There was a big conference there, and we set up a booth, and this girl came up and she said, "Hey, I've heard about your project. I'm a senior in high school and I really, really want to go to Penn State because this is the coolest project ever." And I said, "Well, that's great. If you're ever on campus, let me know and I'll give you a tour of our facilities and our lab and everything." So I gave her my card. I didn't expect anything to come of it. 2 weeks later, she sends me an email and says, "Hey, I'm going to be on campus tomorrow. You mind giving me a tour?" And I said, "Sure." But
this is a good recruiting tool, I guess.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. We had students on the team that came to Penn State because of the team. But she came and toured the lab, and we do have to look forward too, because it's not something that is going to be done in a day, and because of that, we need to have our turnover be just as quick.
Could this be a game changer in a way in terms of making Penn State a go-to university for space industry type work?
Oh, I don't see why it shouldn't. If I look at it as sort of a very broad perspective, people work in teams. You don't go into a company, I don't care which company it is, and here I am standing alone doing things anymore. So the integration of activity here also becomes a model. But in addition to the integration on this particular, in addition to that integration, the whole notion that this is a place that you would go to for workforce in aerospace industries becomes a huge plus up in attracting companies and having them be connected with the school, because they care deeply about workforce.
You mentioned, Liam, about this being a lunar lander, not a lunar rover. And so I wanted to ask Gretchen a little bit about this vehicle. You talked about the fact that you were doing that to simplify it, and it sounded to me like reduce the risk of failure. Is this lunar lander, give us an idea. I'm thinking, is it the size of a lunchbox or a Volkswagen Bug or something in between?
We like to say like your dining room table. So it's about 4 feet in diameter, I would say. So it's a pretty small, if relatively speaking, compared to space industry, small craft, just like a little cylinder. And on it, we're going to have obviously all of our propulsion and all of that. But like Liam said, we are using our thrusters, our hydrogen peroxide thrusters, to land on the moon. And then that's also what we're using to do the hop. So that's where we reduce the risk, is because we don't have these wheels that pop out and then travel.
And this propellant, this hydrogen peroxide, is a change. So you've done some testing and decided that, I believe you were using oxygen and ethanol mix, and decided for some reason that that wasn't the way to go.
Yeah, we just weren't getting the performance that we wanted and that we felt that we needed on the moon. So we decided to switch to hydrogen peroxide. And it's also a simpler system. Like Liam said, it's a monopropellant, so it's only one thing. It's just the hydrogen peroxide.
Fewer things to go wrong if it's one thing.
Right, the liquid oxygen and the ethanol was just a big system that we had.
You have to mix them.
Yes, correct.
But that was a partnership with NASA. So, I mean, talk about a collaboration across the board.
In fact, there's a Space Act agreement, with the first one ever, between NASA and a university. Most of their agreements, or all of their agreements prior to this, have been with major corporations.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people sit there and think, okay, you go to the moon and human space travel, but obviously there's no human aboard here, and it makes things simpler. But do you have that same sort of testing and retesting and safety and all of these different components, and are there challenges there? I mean, it was interesting that you described your challenges as funding and continuity of people that were working on it. None of the technical parts of it.
Well, I mean, we are Penn State and we can do this. We have proven across the board that the engineering infrastructure is here, the marketing infrastructure and the business infrastructure are here. But really, it's getting all of those things to work together to create the success that we're creating with the Lunar Lion. So, you know, when you look at, you asked about safety and what we do with regard to that, everything is modeled in simulations before we do it in real life. So before we actually do rocket testing, we check every portion of that to see, is this going to work? What is our factor of safety? And then, you know, we run that and run that and run that, and then eventually we run it in real life. But, you know, isolated, it's in its own little cell too. So everything's entirely safe.
And in fact, Dr. Barron, a blue ribbon panel of the leading experts in the country will be deciding very, very soon whether everything they're doing here works. We're talking about people from Lockheed Martin to the California Institute of Technology, lots of experts from Johns Hopkins University. Tell us about this blue ribbon panel.
Isn't that a fascinating thing in itself, that here are these experts and they're going to come to Penn State to look at a mission and make sure that it's technically viable, and they're looking at something totally led by students, something incredibly unusual, not just a university, but student-led. So, and this becomes a very important checkpoint for us, because it gives us confidence that what's being done can be successful, and that confidence, I hope, will also lead to corporate and private partners who say, okay, you've just gotten this gold seal here, or you have this technical problem that you have to overcome first. Those things become incredibly important. Great compliment to everybody that they're coming aboard.
Yeah, no kidding. You know, I can't get over the richness of the experience you're getting as a result of this. I'm looking back at my own college experience, and it so pales in experience. I just can't get over that. So I'd like you to comment on that, Gretchen.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, getting to test rocket engines, that is so cool. And I mean, I was testing rocket engines before I was even 21. Like, that is so exciting. And I don't know, it's just an experience that you can't get at other colleges. I know we have a lot of groups on campus that are, you know, building satellites or building model rockets, which is awesome, and you learn so much through that. But this is just an experience unlike any other, landing something on the moon.
What about the team itself? Are these lifelong friendships that you're developing in the process?
I would say so. I mean, I think we hang out outside of classes, outside of Lunar Lion work all the time, and that's what makes this work so well, is because we are friends. We have this common interest, so.
All right, well, continued success. You have until the end of January 2015, I guess, to make this happen.
Yeah, we're very excited. This is something that, I mean, it has a deadline, and it's very, very exciting to be a part of something that has such a quick turnaround. But I mean, we don't see that as something that's scary. We see something as, hey, we're doing this. We're doing this every day.
But so if you're thinking about this too, deadlines are always incredibly important. But getting to the moon and making that hop is what's most important, isn't it?
Yeah. We are going to do this, and it doesn't matter for us, you know, necessarily how long it's going to take. But Penn State is on its way to the moon, and it's unstoppable. From our perspective, we get to wake up every day and do this, and there won't be a day when we don't. So that's just how it is for us. It's been an existential constant in our lives.
Well, we wish you all the luck and success at this. Thank you to Gretchen Buttorff and Neigh, members of Penn State's Lunar Lion team. In just a moment, I'll talk one-on-one with President Barron about the 6 major topic areas he's been working to address this year. We'll be right back. We're back with Higher Education in Focus with Penn State President Eric Barron. You know, that was such an amazing example of student engagement and the value it has in enhancing the college experience.
Yeah, so you think about student engagement as adding to the experience of the university. I like to say driving that blue and white sports car more than 20 miles per hour, which is, you know, what going in and out of class is. These students clearly aren't just going in and out of class. They're incredibly engaged. and they happen to be engaged in ways that amplify what they're learning in the classroom. So that's what student engagement or engaged scholarship is all about. But the wonderful thing about it is that now we have a lot of data because we're looking at this topic, and we see that these students tend to be happier. They're developing a peer group that's also engaged, and you could tell that with them talking, that they're friends in and out of the classroom. So all these students are reinforcing all this good engaged behavior. Well, then you discover they have better grade points. And because they're focused, they're spending a lot of, they have to manage their time well. Okay, so I'm healthier and I'm happier and I've got a better peer group and I've got better grades, and they're building their resume. They're spending their entire time here building their resume, and that leads to successful careers. And you heard that again. You can imagine what they might be like in their future. So if you sit there and think healthier, happier, better peer group, better grades, better resume, better job, universities must.
Win-win.
We have to support this type of activity.
You're known as a data-driven president. So I'm kind of curious, with this engaged scholarship, how much time is enough to appreciate the benefits you just mentioned?
Okay, most people say that on the order of 10 to 20 hours a week is kind of a sweet spot. That if you go more than 20 hours a week, you tend to have too much to do and too much on your plate. And so something starts to fall off. And if it's less than that, then it's not that same level of engagement that really supports this focus and time management and, you know, sufficiently to build your resume and all those pieces. So it's kind of a sweet spot there.
You mentioned this blue and white Corvette automobile analogy of what students do or don't do.
Right.
And you've discovered that a lot of students are only driving this 20 miles per hour when it could be doing so much more. Why is that the case, and how do you change that behavior?
You know, I think there's probably a lot of factors. We tend to talk about students that are very engaged. Well, and we did it again, right? So part of our objective is to get more students that are engaged, not necessarily to have students that are engaged do more, but more students that are engaged. So we really have two choices on how we could do it. One is we could start adding an engaged scholar course designation and tell every student you have to have one. And then we'll know that they've had some experience that amplified in class, outside of class. That's one possibility. The other possibility is to give a medal to engaged students. And so perhaps an engaged student, you have a list of things that are engagement activities, and if you do 3 of 5 or 3 of 6, then you graduate with a medal, and it goes on your transcript. And it goes on your resume, so when you're talking to an employer, they see that you have an engaged scholar medal. Well, if I were an employer, I'd ask, what is that? And then they get to brag about what they've done outside of the classroom. It's not just their grade point.
You're sort of talking about intrinsic and extrinsic reasons, but I read with interest about your studies at the University of Miami. You were working on your dissertation, which means you're finished with all of your classwork, and yet you continued to take classes.
Well, it was, for me, it was free. I had a scholarship. You know, you always got to thank those donors that make a difference for students. But here was a scholarship, and the scholarship basically said, don't stop. Just keep exploring all of the different things that you might be able to do. You know, I went to sea for 6 weeks. It had nothing to do with my dissertation. It was a different kind of experience that allowed that engagement, amplified what I was learning. And this is what we're really hoping for every student.
Here's something else exciting that you're talking about for Penn State. You say that the university ranks number 70th in getting our intellectual property to the marketplace. And you are talking about this idea of bringing entrepreneurs in residence to each of the 18 colleges at Penn State to get these innovative things that Penn Staters are working on out into the world.
Yeah, even in the Commonwealth campuses, entrepreneurs in residence. So this is the way I look at it. We're 17th in terms of total research productivity, grants and contracts. So why are we so far behind in getting all that intellectual property to the marketplace? And so I look at it as sort of a three-part focus. One part of it is How do I enable what goes on in the campus? So let's put entrepreneurs in residence to rub elbows with our faculty, so the chemist can still be a chemist, but somebody else is saying, that's a great idea, we should get it to the marketplace. And we should have all sorts of activities like that. Another part of it is the visibility. We need to make what we do, our ideas, more visible. So I'll just give you one quick idea. Imagine having all of our alumni see our intellectual property by able to sign on and see all the ideas that people are putting out there for investor.
And you can just imagine there's someone out there who says, my company can probably do this.
Yes, and support it, but it gives the alumni a completely different picture, because what they're seeing is all the ideas that are coming out and then investing in them. And the last part is, do we have the spaces around us and the mentoring that keep people here creating companies?
Because a big part of what you want to do is recruit and retain.
Absolutely. And think about the number of people that come here, come back to retire. Why not? Why can't we keep them in the middle?
Good thinking. Thank you so much for being with us. Our guests today, Gretchen Buttorff and Neigh, members of Penn State's Lunar Lion team, with Penn State President Dr. Eric Barron. I'm Patty Satalia. For all of us here at Penn State Public Media, thanks for joining us.
Support for higher education in focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. On the Hub Lawn or at psu.bncollege.com. The attorneys of McNeese, Wallace, and Neigh. Your mission, your goal, your lawyers. More at mwn.com. And from viewers like you. Thank you.
This has been a production of WPSU.